Hello and welcome to the very last episode of Gardening Australia for 2016. And I've got to tell you that with summer just around the corner, I'm getting excited. It's the perfect time to get out into the backyard and spend some time with family and friends. And a little later, I'll be giving you a few tips on how you can avoid that special time being spoilt by these unwanted guests. Let's see what else we're dishing up this week.
Some people collect stamps, others collect model trains. I'm going to introduce you to a couple whose plant collection circumnavigates the globe.
Don't you think that presents that you've made yourself have a personal dimension you just don't get from store-bought? I've got some ideas for the gift-giving season that are both nifty and thrifty.
Norfolk Island pine would make a great Christmas tree, but perhaps the best of all, Petunia pinifolia, the G-bung. It's got pine-like foliage, it looks great in your garden, and it holds those Christmas decorations beautifully.
When I think of summer, I think of tomatoes. They're one of the most popular crops to grow in veggie gardens. And if you put them in right now, you'll be picking heaps from just after Christmas right through to the first frost. I've got a heap of different varieties here, but the ones I'm most excited to show you are these ones. This one here is the beefsteak. I know this will work really well. It produces really big fruit that are meaty, that are great for sandwiches and sauces. Now, if you've got kids, they love cherry tomatoes. And this is the wild sweet. It's a tiny tomato that it produces that's super sweet, but there are hundreds of them, so there'll be no problems with sharing. And the last one I've never actually grown before. It's called the Wapsipinicon peach. It's got a yellow fruit, and they reckon if you're in fruit fly prone areas, then this is the tomato for you. The hairs act like a natural defense mechanism. Now, there's three main steps when planting your perfect tomato. The first one is preparation. Pick an open, sunny position, preferably one that hasn't grown tomatoes for at least 3 years. I'm digging in some homemade compost, aged cow manure, and a dusting of gypsum. This will provide calcium that will help prevent blossom end rot and encourage strong, disease-resistant growth. And although tomatoes like a good feed, if you use too much nitrogen, you'll end up with leaves and no fruit. I reckon raising tomatoes is a lot like raising kids. Don't spoil them. They'll be more resilient as a result, so take it easy with the fertilisers. Secondly, plant deep. Now, these holes might seem a bit excessive, but that's because 3/4 of the plant is going to be buried. The reason I do this, because if we get windy weather, the plant will be more stable in the ground. Also, tomatoes form roots out of their stems very easily, meaning that if I planted it up to here, I'd get a root zone of about 20 centimetres depth. But if I plant it up to here, I get a root zone of 40 centimetres depth, meaning I have a more vigorous and healthy plant. Now all I have to do is snap off the leaves and put it in the ground. Thirdly, all climbing varieties of tomatoes are going to need some form of staking. The trick is to be supportive rather than controlling. Dad uses 1 stake per plant. I usually use 3, but this year I'm trialling a weave method, which is putting stakes in along the row of tomatoes and then every 30 centimetres or so tying twine along those stakes. That way, as the plants grow, I can weave them through the twine, which means no tying and the plants will naturally support themselves. Well, that's how to plant your perfect tomatoes. Now to grow them, all I need is a long hot season and plenty of water. That's my tomatoes ready and raring to go for the summer. Well, we may be off the telly till next year, but please stay in touch by sharing your gardening stories and photos on our Facebook page and our website. They won't be taking a holiday. Well, good luck in your own garden, and I'll see you next year.
I don't beat about the bush. I call a spade, and this to me is a great spade. I love collecting old historical items like that, and I just like to think of the person who enjoyed the garden using that spade. But I love this one. In my garden, it's perfect. It's lightweight, it's long, like me. I don't have to bend too far down. It's got a lovely blade to it, nice and sharp with a little bit of a point, easy to dig. And I'm going to be using this spade for many years to come.
This is a beautiful garden.
Thanks, mate.
It is. I mean, there's something here for the whole family. There's herbs. Alex is deep in the veggies. There's a food forest. There's chickens. And there's still heaps of space. But not that long ago, it was a very different story. Back in early 2015, the Gordon family won a complete garden makeover, and I was more than happy to lend a hand.
It's what we'd hoped for, and it's coming to fruition. We're out there most weekends, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 2 or 3 hours, and it's been great up to date.
Just amazing how much you can actually grow. We're lucky to have the space. We just come out here and pick whatever's in season for dinner and what we've got a glut of. I've been pickling and preserving, so that's been great.
They've certainly taken the garden to the next level, but with summer on the horizon, they want to enjoy their outdoor entertainment area and have a say about who's on the guest list.
If we can control the mozzies, it'd make this space a fair bit more enjoyable.
So controlling mozzies is today's mission. Of course, you can turn on a zapper or apply lots of insect repellent, but I'm here to tell you that a lush, biodiverse garden will do a much better job because birds, bats, fish, frogs and insects will all eat mosquitoes and their larvae. Now, Stu has set up a little bit of a pond project here with Noah, but immediately you can see that it's got a few problems. First of all, it's out of the ground, which means it's susceptible to temperature change. Now, the plants are struggling, so they're not going to attract any dragonfly by any stretch of the imagination. I'm told that there's a few goldfish in there, but they're struggling because this azolla is sucking out a lot of oxygen from the water. They're all problems that can be easily solved.
So that came out of, that was some of the stuff that we did.
Oh yeah, there's the fish. First things first, I'm going to get this pond into the ground so the surrounding soil can act as insulation. The bricks are going to sit over the top like that. So that provides a lip for the mulch so the mulch doesn't fall in. Let's check it. Oh, that's good. Precious cargo here. Release the fish. There they go. Beautiful. With the pond in place, it's now time to put some plants in. Alex has got some existing water chestnuts and some water celery. I'm adding to that the hairy naidu, which is basically an Australian four-leaf clover. Lots of good luck in this one. And that will spread across the surface and provide lots of habitat for the baby dragonflies to come and lay. We've then got a corkscrew rush. Isn't that just a brilliant plant? And then here, we've got the golden striped rush, and it too will provide a home for insects. Put the water chestnuts in the middle. I'm going to harvest them. Now to put our special log across the top. That'll help any stranded animal life to get in and out of the pond. There's another piece here. that I can rest. While I was pretty happy with our pond makeover, it still needed some finishing touches. So I came back the next day and added the brick edging. Now I reckon it's perfect. I'll also be back later in the show with our next line of defence against mozzies, which is plants, plants and more plants.
Norfolk Island pine would make a great Christmas tree, and eventually when you plant it outside, Santa will be able to park his sleigh there because it's a really big tree and he can bring all the presents down it. You could also use calitris. This one's Calitris oblonga, lovely conifer-like plant. Of course, Adenanthus sericius will bring silver foliage into the house, and that really is delightful in the garden too. And I'm very fond of the Alocasurinas. They make the ideal small tree for the home garden. But perhaps the best of all, and the one I would choose to use, would be Petunia pinifolia. It's a lovely thing, the G-bung. It's got pine-like foliage, it looks great in your garden, and it holds those Christmas decorations beautifully. It would pay to pot one of these plants up well before Christmas, so it looks well established by Christmas time. And a red pot, well, that would just complete the whole thing.
A lot of people want to know how to get the most out of their basil plants. What they're really asking is, how do I stop it from growing tall and skinny and going to seed straight away? Well, the answer is simple. It's all in the harvesting. Simply go from the top down to a junction point where you get 2 good bits of growth. Snip out the middle, and those will double up. Therefore, more leaves and a more vigorous bush.
Nestled next to the Daintree National Park in tropical far northern Queensland is a 9-hectare garden that houses one of the most amazing plant collections I've ever seen. In fact, I'm on the equatorial plant discovery tour of my life. Now, what's that?
Yes, Salacca magnifica.
Oh, that's a winner.
That came from Malaysia and Borneo.
Wow.
This whole section here is from New Guinea. Palms from Madagascar.
That's spectacular, isn't it? What is it?
That's actually a calathea.
Calathea?
Yes.
Wow. And the people who created this tropical tour de force are plant collectors extraordinaire, Chris Hall and Arden Deardham, both sufferers of a common tropical malady.
The symptoms of floromania are an unswerving interest in plants and a desire to grow them. There is no cure for floromania.
Watching things grow and seeing them flower will live forever, because you've got to keep living to see the next thing flower.
So this really hooked you in, creating new life and watching it bloom.
It's always a challenge to get something from a new place, and gardeners always like to push the boundaries. One of the advantages of going overseas and collecting plants is you see where they come from, and therefore you can make much better choices when you're placing these in the garden situation.
And the best way to check out this homage to the plants of the equator is to jump in the tour bus for a quick trip around the globe. Some fantastic prop roots over there.
That's a pandanus that comes from New Guinea. Absolutely fantastic, giant pandanus. Wow. Jump out and we'll have a look. It's found up there on the Kokoda Trail.
And the original support has completely withered and it's been replaced by these stilt roots.
That's right. Just like giant props.
It's a landscaper's dream, isn't it?
If you've got room.
It's certainly green, isn't it?
It certainly is. 414 mils in the last month, a record. Here is a Salacca from Borneo. Salacca magnifica. Magnificent in name, magnificent in form, structurally nice. Not only that, it's got a very nice fruit.
Wow. This really takes homegrown fruit to a new level.
To protect that delicious fruit, look at the spines.
Goodness me. Elephants beware.
They call it armed in the botanical world. and armed it is. This valley's actually been cultivated for over 100 years. And in fact, it was cleared from hillside to hillside.
If you'd told me this was natural forest, I would assume that it had always been there.
The trees in there have been planted in the last 5 years. 20 years ago, we started back there at the front gate, and we've gradually worked our way to the back boundary. Someone was here the other day, and they looked at it and said, no, it's not a garden, it's a manicured forest. Bromeliads are one of the wonders of the New World, and these palms are great hosts for them.
I love the way that you're allowing the bromeliads to do their natural thing, growing up the trees.
Here we have the temple bamboo from Thailand.
This is what I feed my guinea pigs on. They'd love it here.
This family of plants that we're passing now are brownias.
And they flower repeatedly, don't they?
They do.
Isn't it in response to heavy rain?
Actually, it's in response to dry.
OK, so they signify dry weather.
Yeah, so you get 3 weeks of dry and you get a whole blooming effect. From Africa, and in particular Ghana, we've got Napoleana imperialis.
Ooh, now that's a collector's plant if ever there was one. I've only ever seen that in books.
Right. It's cauliflorus, flowers from the trunk, and named after Napoleon, commonly referred to as Napoleon's hat. As you wander through the jungles of Panama and Costa Rica, you see some blue gems, almost as good as sapphires.
Now, these are Cochlea-stemma, aren't they?
That's exactly right, Jerry.
Their flowers are just luminous.
Yes, and they're epiphytic. They grow like bromeliads, but they grow well terrestrially as well. Cuba's got a wealth of palms. A lot of them are fan palms, but there's the royals as well. The Cuban petticoat palm, named because of its skirt there.
That's a beauty, isn't it?
And here, on the left, is Cochrane-Ng fallens. The end of the fronds just shimmer in the wind.
Don't they?
And it's absolutely such a fabulous sight. They get huge as well.
I have never seen anything like this.
No one ever had. It came into the country some 25, 30 years ago as seed, germinated, and people saw this amazing pattern on the leaf, even from a seedling.
I would have said that maybe it had had mealybug attack or something like that.
In fact, when we were bringing those through the quarantine system, the people in charge thought it was a disease. But in fact, it's the natural mottling on the leaf.
Now, you see, you're tempting me to move north.
If you want to grow tropical plants, give up the greenhouse in Brisbane, shift to Cairns.
Well, I mean, this is the truth, isn't it? I mean, if you're an artist, then you can change your materials quite easily, can't you?
Yes.
But if you're a gardener and you want to experience a different climate zone, you've got to live in it.
Absolutely.
I've never been so immersed in plants that I've never seen, just read in books. It's a wonderful experience.
This extraordinary acacia is known as the leafless rock wattle, or Acacia aphylla, which literally means without leaves, because the leaves have been reduced to nothing to save water. It grows near Perth in a fairly dry climate with well-drained soils, but it will adapt to other parts of Australia. So the photosynthesis is all done by these stems, and in spring it lights up with these bright yellow flowers. It's also known as the reindeer wattle for obvious reasons, and it makes a fantastic thing for cut flower arrangements with this sculptural stem. So the leafless rock wattle, it will adapt to large parts of Australia, so give it a go.
There are lots of plants that can help deter mozzies naturally. While there's no specific cure-all, a bit of pungent foliage can help confuse and deter the mosquitoes. Like this lemon-scented tea tree. Rub up against that and it releases lots of oil into the air, which will disorient the mosquitoes. What about some beautiful native mints. We've got the round leaf and the cut leaf. That only needs to blow in the breeze, and the smell can be picked up metres and metres away. And then, of course, traditional old thing like rosemary. We know it. Well, let's use it in the garden. It's worked for a long time. I'm putting this round leaf native mint here on the edge of the steps, so every time someone walks down here, they'll brush against it and it'll release all this beautiful minty aroma. Now, I've got a tray of mixed aromatic plants here for you. First of all, this is the Artemisia, and used to be planted around the old bush dunny to keep the flies and the mozzies away. Marigolds, they make their own pyrethrum. What do you think of that colour?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I like it, nice rusty orange. Then there's a mixture of perennial and bush basils, as well as a mixture of mints. If the kids tread on them and stomp on them as they're running through, it doesn't matter. It'll really get those oils all through the space. Go for it. We can plant them out. I'll get the marigolds there. Basil. And just sort of, yeah, just break the ground up. Put a bit of this in. Yeah, that's deep enough. Not all of that in there, just that on the edge.
Maybe the basil over there.
Is that together? Oh, that over where?
Mozzies are a part of life. They're a part of summer, they're a part of the ecosystem. But with some judicious plant selection and a little bit of gentle persuasion, you can hopefully have your summer garden and enjoy it too.
I'm not just making holes, I'm making presents. We're about 6 weeks away from Christmas, so now is a great time to be making some thoughtful and inexpensive gifts for your family and friends. Pot plants. Now there are some gorgeous pots that you can buy. However, I like to make my own containers out of recycled things, like these old tins with the paper labels off. You can even get printed tins. You can even spray paint them. And you can use quirky containers, like old teapots or mugs. Basically anything that you can put a hole into. Now to plant selection. Things that work well are herbs and succulents. Now these are some pieces that I cut from my own collection, and as far as herbs go, you can buy punnets where you'll get 4, 6 or 8 plants for a very reasonable price, or you can even use larger plants. These will give you a more instant effect, and they're great if you've run out of time. Now this size tin is really only suitable for 1 plant per tin. And rather than give any old herb, I like to give combination of herbs that go with the sort of cuisine that people like to cook. So for the start, I'm actually going to use a Mediterranean themed group of herbs. So I've got some flat leaf Italian parsley, which will be gorgeous. I've got some basil. Perfect. And then some thyme. But you could actually use whatever Italian or Mediterranean themed herbs you like. You could use oregano, marjoram, chives, really anything. And now for an Asian themed combo. I'm going to use some beautiful coriander. It's a bit floppy, but it'll stand up as soon as it gets fed and watered. I'm going to use some Thai basil, perfect for Asian cuisine. And some garlic chives. Now you could also use some chili plants or even Vietnamese mint. Labelling them with pop sticks is a nice touch. It's very practical for identification purposes, which is ideal for novice gardeners. And now to succulents. These are really simple to plant. Just get your cuttings, make some holes and push them in. Now with these pots, I've used just one variety. Here I've got a crassula, I've got Aeonium Schwarzkopf and a green Aeonium. But over there I've done a mixed pot, which also looks great, using Echeveria and Graptoveria. If you want to know more about propagating succulents from cuttings, go to the Gardening Australia website. Time for some finishing touches. I've used a bit of string to tie together these smaller pots, and I'm using some ribbon to zhuzh up these larger pots. I've spray painted the leaf of a Eucalyptus Silver Princess to use as a gift tag. Now you could do the same thing with any other leathery leaf. There you go. Bespoke and beautiful. Personalised gifts made specially for special friends. Have a go yourself.
This may well be our final episode until March 2017, but don't despair. There's plenty of ways you can get your TV gardening fix over the summer. The show's going to be repeated, so keep an eye on your local guides. If you want to catch up on a story, you can head to our website. If you want to see an entire episode repeated, head over to iView. And for lots of gardening inspiration every day, check out our Facebook and Instagram. I reckon it's time to get started with summer. What do you think, Frankie?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it. Summer has just begun. Enjoy yourself.